problem, but anyway, it's simpler to do it this way. It's still made a working folder. We'll start with raw therapy this time, since I've just fuck. Anyway, okay, one more time in GIMP. Why not? Let's just start with the JPEG here. So this is the map that I got in the Jacob Inn of the North Rim roads. And this is a much simpler map than they give you at the Ranger Shack when you come in to pay, which is this fold out thing, and it has some details but not all the details, and it's just a big mess. So we'll work off this simpler version. And for those of you unfamiliar with GIMP, that is linear, and this is perception, sorry, graphing, and that is linear scaling, and this is log scaling. We're going to stick with this. This matches what you see in the back of your camera. When you look at the histogram, you've got your RGB modes there, and the white is the luminance, which is largely the green channel. Okay, and let's do some basic functions here. We'll do a rotation, and in GIMP it works the opposite of raw therapy, by the way. So we're increasing the angle of the clockwise rotation by doing this. Okay, and we can rotate because it all fits in the image, so we don't have any problems with cropping the image when we rotate that way. Otherwise you have to resize the canvas and then do the rotation. Otherwise it'll crop off the tops and bottoms. So now we do the crop, Shift C, crop, take off the fix, so we can do a freehand cropping. Do the crop that way, and then hit the thing to crop there. And now we want to do a rotate by counterclockwise, actually a flip, basically transform. Flipping would be turning it mirror imaging one way or the other, and rotate counterclockwise in this case. And there we go. So now I have to pause the video to save the file so you can't see where it's going. So pause. All right, file, save as. There, okay. Okay. All right, and we're back. We're back here. Now, let's close this up and try it again in raw therapy with the raw file. Discard changes. That has to do with the internal GIMP image format as opposed to saving it out in a standard format. So now this file, which we'll copy and paste, is the map in we'll call that the map in GIMP, North Rim map, simple, and made it in GIMP, so I'll put a G there and save that. Okay, now we'll try it again in raw therapy. So we're going to open the raw file in raw therapy. Let's see how this works. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but we'll find out. And it'll pop up down here. There it is right now. Switch to that. Okay. So, does not show any spicy details in the path, but raw therapy, again, or I haven't said this yet in this recording, raw therapy cannot actually do the rotation plus and minus 90 degrees. It can only do plus and minus 45 degrees. Okay, so we're going to skip saving it out of here. We will go through the basic steps here. Now, this is my basic system for doing these image processing steps from either JPEG, TIFF, or RAW files, when you're talking about taking shots from a camera and you're saving them in, you're trying to edit them and get the color and exposure to match what you would get with a 6A, Google 6A cell phone, which is very good at doing this kind of thing. It's not going to give you the detail that you'd see here. Okay. If we go to 100%, well, actually, sorry, I have to do it here now. It won't give you the exact kind of detail that you'll see here, but it will give you good overall color and exposure and a decent amount of resolution, as long as you're not looking at the image at 100, 100, 200, 300%, which is what we're doing now. So go back to the crop view, make it slightly smaller. Okay, so this is the thing. Raw therapy is going to show that path of the file the entire time unless you turn that off. Okay, that's the file image and off. Okay, so the way that raw therapy basically works is it has a list of submenus here along the top. Okay, and each one of these submenus has a submenu under which you will find subcategories. We are going to use the exposure block regularly. We're going to skip all this other stuff. We may use the dynamic range compression regularly. We will not use a vignetting filter. We won't need to. The camera will fix that. At least my camera that I use to take these pictures will fix that. I won't use a graduated filter. You may or may not know that already. In the image settings details, we will definitely use the haze removal. Won't use the sharpening or any of these other ones. No noise reduction. What you have to do to turn it on is to click the circle that enables it. As you can see there, it is clarifying the image in a sense. And what it does to do that is it has a mask that it sets up. You can look at that mask here by clicking show the depth map. I'm going to avoid changing these settings. I will let you, and I would suggest that you do the one thing I'm going to do next after I finish showing you this, which is to work off a backup of the PP3 files, which are saved with every file, both in opening a file and in writing it out. It saves a PP3 file with the settings for the file that you opened, which is what this is, and we're going to duplicate that and rename it as such. Rename, let's call them file open, default file open. Open. And basically what this does is allow you to work from file to file. 240623, and then we have one for the file that was written out. That's what these are, and we'll copy that too, and oops, what did I do? Let's undo that. Yes, delete. Okay, so it didn't select the file and copy it. All right, Control C, Control V. In Linux, rename this as your default output, and then 240623. I need to get this out here. All right, so okay, so we're going to use this as a default setting. We'll load that in. Then I'll try changing this. We'll see how that works. I haven't actually tried that part, and we'll see how that works. Okay, so docs, And okay, where were we? So okay, so we were talking about the file information. Okay, so I'm gonna write this out, and we'll see if it shows the path details that I'm trying to avoid showing. So let me try that first, and then because that way I don't have to restart this video. Pause that, and then we'll go save. Yes, okay. It does show all the path info until I change the path, and it does not save it. So we'll save RT, and that'll be that. Okay, so it did actually show the path of the last save that I made, which I did not want to show the info for that. So now that I've saved it once, it should be fine. And so we just remember to save the file at least once without showing the path, so I can change the default folder. So once you save one file there, it will change the default folder to the folder that you saved to, and then everything that you work from in the same folder or you want to save to the same folder will be fine. So and I tag my raw therapy output files with the RT, and once you set this, everything that you save with that same name, it'll tag it with a -1, -2, -3, like this. Okay, and then we can go into the docs folder here. You'll see that there are two versions of the file here. Okay, this was already there, and then after that it incremented, and we're going to copy this one and save it as a map, like the other ones are named. Rename. So we're going to call it the same thing as this, but with the extension there still. And north rim map simple. Okay, so then I know what software I used to make it, and the format. I didn't say. I usually will save a J. This is. Oh, well, we can do this. Let's put this in here, and we'll put a nef underscore. Okay, and this one will use the JPEG as a source format, and obviously it's PNG now. Okay, so these are our working paths. So let's talk about this for a minute. So I'm going to show you how it worked with a shot that I took yesterday at the North Rim. And I took two sets the way you normally do this is does either plus in or minus out, or there are ways around that. This is the default image file viewer in GIMP, which is called IGNOME or EOG short. Okay, and we'll go to say 200% or 100% really. And there is, sorry, let's start with the basic information. All right, so first of all, you can't see this really well here, especially because of this stupid flipper. I don't know it was in there. Okay, so damn, all right, this is gonna suck. The North Rim, you come off 89 from Kanab, and there's a way to come down, and there's also a way from Fredonia down 89. So the difference is that this is Page here, and the Grand Canyon goes up through here at Page. This is where the horseshoe curve is, just southwest of Page. And there's a road that goes from Page down to 89A, which is the main road coming up from, this is a side issue, but just so you have an idea, and I have an idea later, this is the road coming up from Flagstaff. So you can either take the desert route, which takes you past the Vermilion Cliffs, and it also goes by the Cliff Dwellers, and there's another actual set of hotels there, very rustic kind of thing, and a gas station there. It's important to know, if you're going to do this, you need to know where the gas stations are so you don't get stuck out here in the middle of freaking nowhere, or down here in the middle of freaking nowhere on 67 and run out of gas. So half tank, full tank whenever you get a chance. Okay, this will save you a lot of hate and hating life. Okay, so you can take this. This goes through the Kanab Forest all the way out to Jacob Lake. Okay, the forest actually ends somewhere here as you go west. So basically, this whole section right here is where the Kanab Forest is. You come out of that, you go to the gate's somewhere around here, and that's where you pay to go to the park. Okay, so you got to come all the way down here from the gate, the ranger gate, to get to the North Rim west visitors area, where the lodges are. There are lodges and camping and stuff pretty much all up and down this road here. Okay, there's also another gas station roughly here somewhere where they call the general store, and there's also gas stations, I think, down here at the very extreme of the south west. This is west. There's a center, and there's an east viewing area where there's a campground here and a campground here. Okay, so I took one set of shots down here at the southwest viewing area, and then I went up here, and there, once you get past all of this stuff, there is, you see this, it says Imperial Point, right? There is a road that comes off of the main road 67 that goes, it splits to go up here to Cape Royal, and it splits to go further north and east to Imperial Point. That is a little dusty little road here, which you will fly by. There's a sign, brown sign, that says that this road is here, and in like 50 yards you'll fly right by it unless you're paying strict attention. And you know, I had to stop there, back up, and then go up here. So it's about 15 miles to this split, which goes north, and then it's 3 miles to Imperial Point, and then it's 15 miles to Cape Royal. The second set of pictures I took along this road, there is a rest stop here about halfway where I took the third set of photos. I didn't actually go to Cape Royal, and I didn't actually go to Imperial Point, but it basically, you can access this side of the cliff and take pictures from there. Along, there's like a turn where there's a quick space where you can see out there, and then there's another point where there's a nice big rest stop and picnic area where you can see out there also. So the first one at Grand Canyon Southwest, the second one along here, probably right here in this little notch, and a third one here. Okay, and I'm not going to show you all three of them. I'm just telling myself where I took the pictures. So we come out of here, out of Iagnome there, and we'll look at now taking some, doing some actual work on some actual samples that I took here. Okay, these are just samples that I picked out of those 3 sets of shots, and out of one day I took pictures at the south viewing area, and the second day, yesterday, I came down there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, took pictures, some more pictures at the south viewing area in better light, and then went to the other parts of the Imperial Point split, Cape Royal split, took some also from there. Now, the main thing is that this is an afternoon light, so the light's coming from the west, going to light up the canyon from the west, so you can see the west, the east side, the far side, is directly lit, and the near side, which is north or west, is in shadow coming from the light coming over the top. The problem I had the first time taking shots at the south side was that it was in the morning at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the scenes were lit partially from light coming over the east side of the canyon and lighting the west side of the viewing area. But the east side of the canyon was largely in shadows, and so there was a very large dynamic range for the shots that were taken of the east side of the canyon. The sky was brightly lit above that, and there were clouds up above that, and then the canyon itself was largely in shadow. So that was this huge HDR scene problem that I was having taking these shots, and that's where I really had half my problem, is the shots were not actually well lit, much less directly lit. But in general, when you're still taking direct shots, you still have to deal with this bright contrast between the sky and the foreground, which also can cause a problem. So part of the issue here is the 6A is very good at handling that problem. Your average camera is not, and especially if you're shooting it manually, you have to learn how to take the shots to get a decent exposure balance, and you need to learn how to process them to get a good overall exposure, and where it's necessary to shrink the exposure using HDR techniques to do that, and where it's not, to avoid doing it. If you do it where there isn't enough of an exposure range, then you tend to get a flat exposure, which doesn't look natural. And if you don't do it when there's a large exposure range, you get really dark sections in large parts of the shot that obviously don't look natural. And you need to bring up those dark parts in the overall exposure. And what raw therapy does a good job of basically giving you options to either bring up the shadow parts or bring down the highlights. And so we're going to stick with the easiest part, which is to bring down the highlights and then raise the overall exposure. So first thing here, we'll create some thumbnails to work with. Use DC Raw to create thumbnails here, and then we'll be able to go in and look at the thumbnails and see what we have here. So these are all shots that I took of the south rim, sorry, the south viewing point, and we'll look through there and I'll show you what I got here. So this is straight out of the camera. Now these are the afternoon shots. Took it from behind the viewing center, and not the best alignment, but that's okay. That's one of the things with DSLR you normally have to fix, and we'll just stick with fixing them as quickly with as little effort as possible. These are shots here that I took, and those are just a quick burst. I just took the 10 shots from a particular number, which you can see here as 39.5 star. Okay, so now we'll open all the thumbnails in GIMP just to get an idea of what we're dealing with here. And normally there's ways to do this faster, but I'm going to just do it for simplicity. Already have these thumbnails generated, histograms generated, but we'll stick to doing them again just for fun. Okay, so let's get that size down. All right, that's fine right there. Don't need to do that. Okay, so this is the first one versus the last one on the end here. I'm going to go back to here and we'll see. Okay, so let's make that bigger, full screen, so you can see it. Okay, so there's a histogram in for each one. Let's go back to the, I guess we should start with the, I don't know if it matters. Here is this 3958, and this one is 3950. So we'll start with the first one. So if we go into view, I forgot exactly how this is. I don't think it matters. At any point, there's a way to deal with this where you can, oh, there it is, right there. Okay. So I need to get out of this crop mode for one thing and get to something simple, which isn't going to ruin the image. But point being that there are ways you can do this where it's going to track the point in the histogram that you're selecting. Like we can do a selection here, and it'll show you the histogram for that selection. And these other details, which I would suggest you not worry about, honestly, at this point. Basically, you can see that this is a midtone or a low midtone, and this is a shadow, okay, and this is the highlights. This is medium highlights. This is the bright highlights. Now what it's done is it's formed a conglomerate sample of the image. So if I clear, okay, it's going to show the whole image. If I want to see just these highlights here, I can select here, and that's what you get for the highlights. So the point that really needs to be made here is you need your overall histogram to have the highlights somewhere in the upper third of the image. Now if you're bracketing, I took these in a 2-shot bracket with a half a EV stop bracket, step between them. So it'll be 39, 50, depending on whether that's the even bracket or the high bracket or the low bracket. And you can see that's the bracket. Guide moving slightly. Okay, so one of the problems with shooting brackets in a DSLR, if you're shooting, is that you can stop the bracket sequence by letting off the shutter release key, and then it's stuck. The next shot will be the high bracket, and it'll shoot once and then 2 more to finish the next bracket. So that can involve, as we have here, a change in the actual scene. And this is why I don't suggest shooting HDR blends in the camera, because the registration problems that come from that are somewhat obvious. Even at full screen, if something moves in the image, then that's going to show up as another person there in the blend. And even if you're shooting a static scene, and as long as you're shooting outdoors, you can get a lot of wind blowing the foliage around. You're going to get some misregistration from the fact that your hand is holding the camera. Any kind of low frequency vibration will show up in there. And the other sneaky thing is a slight change in the focal length from your hand being on the focal length of the barrel, the lens barrel. So that kind of shows up in stuff like edge detail. You lose edge detail. This is wavering a little bit. That's wavering a little bit. The edges are not quite aligned. The detail will be lost. And that's where the 6A not having that kind of detail in its low resolution JPEGs is not really a big deal. And it's like, fine, we'll just make low resolution JPEGs. The files will be small. The image processing is quick. Blam, blam. So it can do all this stuff at 1/3000th of a second that you can't do in a DSLR by setting the shutter speed to 1/3000th of a second, because the camera itself is moving. And the HDR blend, at least in D850, will show that movement. Like, you can move the camera during the HDR bracket if you're pinpointing a light source, and I'm not showing that, but you can pinpoint the light source and show that it takes 2 shots of that light source and then blends the image back together. In the 6A, I think it only shows the last one in that case. It's smart enough not to try to blend 2 misregistered shots, brackets. It just shows the last one. It does some image processing on that last one to give you a decent one. So it has an advantage there, and it's smart enough not to try to take a blend. And while the D850 does have an auto blend mode, I don't know if it's smart enough not to try to blend 2 images like that. It certainly will handle an HDR range that's over the 1, 2, and 3 EV that it shows in the options, it will then go beyond 3 EV, and that works reasonably well. It also can go under 1 EV, but the main thing is that the blending shooting handheld is not going to be as sharp as any one single shot, as long as the dynamic range requires more than like half an EV. It does work fine as a backup, and it does work fine if you need a lot of HDR correction, but it's not the kind of thing you're going to want to shoot in general and just say, I'm always going to shoot HDR and blah, blah, blah. You will definitely see a loss of sharpness in the image shooting HDR on a regular basis and blending on a regular basis. So I suggest just shooting single shots like this. Pick one that has a good exposure to start with, because that will require less post-processing. Certainly won't require the dynamic range optimization step, and definitely won't require a graduated filter, which you could put on. But my thing is, in general, the first thing you want to do is see if you even need any HDR corrections. So I'm just doing this to show the histogram and how it works in GIMP. I already have these set off in storage somewhere, so I'm not going to regenerate them again. Okay, so if I then take the shot and I'm going to apply a basic correction, let's say we'll knock down the well, I think there actually is an exposure one that we can use. Okay, in the newer versions, again, we can knock down the exposure level. We can even show it as a split view, so it shows the original. Okay, and when we hit OK, it'll show the shift in exposure down to the shadows. Okay, low midtones and shadows. Control Z to undo that, and then the thing that I find myself doing fairly often in GIMP is to go into the levels, which is showing the actual histogram here, and either changing the white point manually by dragging this guy down here, or changing the gray point manually by shifting this guy down. What this tends to do is to push some of the mid-range signal into the upper. It basically adjusts the gamma, in my quick and dirty estimation of it, which increases the effective, what's what I'm looking for, clarity of the overall shot. And we're going to get to the clarity here when we start talking about the haze filter. So if I go out and back and out and back, you see it's shifting, it's spreading that histogram. Okay, just a little bit, which increases the clarity. The shot can get to be too chalky if you're not fiddling around with the gray point and the gamma, and increasing or decreasing or setting the gamma does adjust that clarity and makes the foreground kind of pop out without going into a lot of contrast and stuff. So the haze filter essentially uses that function to bring out the shadows and midtones from and highlights also from the general haze that you see here in the sky. That is the general problem brought on by shooting in hazy conditions. So you can take shots in hazy conditions where the sky is just cruddy, and that hides the background details, and only the foreground really gets shown well because it's not 500 yards away from you and hidden by haze. You can also go shooting in days when it's perfectly clear skies and stuff, and there's less of this, but there usually tends to be at least some of it. And even when the sky is bright blue, there's virtually no haze visible in the sky, you still can get some haze in taking the actual shots like this, although this was not that particular set of conditions when I went down to shoot. When I was at my hotel, it was beautiful blue sky around noon, and then over the afternoon it got kind of cloudy, and then the afternoon haze came in, which I think is basically just water vapor coming up over the course of the day. But in the morning, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. People were racing down there, racing through town to get down there, to take shots down there in the morning. And that's fine, but the problem is, again, when the sun is back over here on the east side, all of this is going to be in shadow. This happens to be a particular point which is far enough west on the south viewing pavilion to where you can see more of the rocks and stuff over here on the right, but it's still not really optimal. It's still not really a good place to take pictures, which is why I went looking for other places to take pictures. So there's not here in these sections much that I'm going to show different here, but we'll look at this one. Let's try this one. This one's already got a decent exposure, and that is going to be 3855, okay? And I'll save a screenshot here just so you can see what this looks like, and we'll get back to that later. So let's, this goes into the pictures default setting, default folder in Ubuntu, and we'll grab it out of there later. I'll get to it later. Okay, so for now, let's go look at 3855 in raw therapy. I could possibly stop this and create another video, but since we're doing so well, let's keep going. Oops, he says, oops, right there. All right, we got to trim that out, so we'll finish that out. Yikes. All right. New file. Let's go back over here. Okay. So I got to fix that. All right. All right. We're starting a new file. I have my recording continuing on. And because I made a boo-boo when I closed GIMP and showed things I didn't want to show. So we're back in our working directory, 3855. Let's just open this and make sure it's the right one. We're going to edit this one because this is a good histogram. It's a good shot. And let's see what we can do with it in... oh, actually, we want to look at the slightly underexposed version, which is 3954. Come on, you can do it. Here it goes. All right, so this one's slightly underexposed. This one is properly exposed. So this is another underexposed one. I think we'll try this one just for the hell of it. We'll try them both. The hell. All right, so you're going to pop this open in raw therapy. Now walk through each step. You can leave the steps in because they do add in the terms of effect, and you can change the settings. Okay, so let's walk through some basics first, and then I'll load the defaults from another example. Okay, so I always start over here in the capture sharpening. Now, capture sharpening is going to sharpen the entire image, but it does do also some corrections of registration by our filtering, and it's such a minor type of sharpening that it saves me from having to do sharpening in GIMP, so I can leave it on or take it off. And if you want to see the effect, we can go down to some low thing here. Okay, so you'll see the effect here if I enable it, and it is rather subtle. Okay, see there's a subtle sharpening improvement. Taking it off, you can go down a little bit more and do this. Okay, so now this is without any noise reduction, so and also the idea is to fix some of the registration between the blue-green pixel pairs and the red-green pixel pairs. So I'm showing you all the settings here. This is the default setting here from the last time that I ran GIMP, and that's what they are, and I'll leave it in there and we'll hide the settings. Go on. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, go back to the view here, is we need to crop it out because we don't want to do changes that are going to get cropped out anyway. So I'll set this as 16:9. We are going to lock the ratio as opposed to unlock the ratio, and come in here, and we want to enable it so we get the cube. Well, in raw therapy, it has a limitation that you need to make it smaller before you make it bigger to resize it. And then the question is, do we need to do any rotations, which are done here in lens geometry. And we're not going to rotate it. Let's say we'll do it for example. That's a counterclockwise rotation. And then we can reset it here back to the original. Okay. So because everything looks to be relatively straight vertically, tree straight, people sitting here straight, this is relatively straight, and the railing of the rock is relatively, it helps to remember what's going on here. And then the other thing I check when I'm down here is I'll check the lens profile. So there's a camera, it automatically detected the camera. It did not detect the lens because the 3888 that I have in there, 3580 AFD Nikon lens that I have is not in the list of Nikon lens that are in the list of lenses for raw therapy, at least not that I have here. Okay, so fine, we'll ignore the lens corrections. This is a generic shot, we're not going to worry about it. Okay, so no rotations, no corrections for the crop. We just cropped out most of the sky. The one thing I do try to do is if I have half a cloud here, I might shrink it down, or half of a branch like there on the left. I think I caught a branch here. Yeah. So we'll pull it in to take that out like that, and then go back to the crop view, and this is what we got. Okay. So now this pulled the bottom up a little bit, so we'll push that back down, and then we have to go back over here to make sure we don't make it too wide, and get that back in. And we are going to raise the scene here to let's see if this does it again. The problem with, okay, so there it is, the bottom, we're fine. Okay, so this crop will happen when it does the saved the file, and also all the previews are going to be, the effects are going to be low resolution effects anyway. So this is, we're really just seeing like a preview of what's going to happen. Okay, so no rotations. We can close the rotation box, perspective, profile, lens corrections, distortions, no distortion corrections, no chromatic aberration, all that stuff is going to be closed. Okay, close the lens geometry box altogether. We'll just look at the crop, and it's set, and that's closed, and the crop is active versus not active. And you can see the histogram changes because it's looking at the sky more versus less. Okay, and that's one reason why crop in the sky is a good shortcut to solving a lot of these problems, because it takes out that highlight and it clears out this histogram, and it gives you a little bit more room to work with on the ends there. It's reducing the dynamic range of the image. All right, next thing, we're gonna skip the funky stuff here with the 2195 lens corrections in the year 2195. Don't do that as the basics. This is the white balance setting. Again, don't change the white balance. Leave it on and using the camera white balance. Okay, and we'll get to the more important stuff like the exposure related and sharpening related settings. All off, and this is the one we're going to focus on here, is the haze removal. Okay, so like I said before, what the idea of the haze removal is to bring some pop into the image, to bring some clarity to the image, to get rid of this big, chunky, whitish blue kind of haze in the background. Let's see what happens. Now there's two ways to run this. You can run this in color. Sorry, I have to turn it on. in color, or you can run it just in luminance. Okay, so I find that this gives a better basic image because running it in color tends to oversaturate and over contrast. But obviously you have a choice. And if you want to see what it does, it basically generates a mask here that you can see by turning the mask on. And the depth will bring the effect down in depth. I usually just want it up in the sky, maybe a little bit in the far parts, the distance parts of the shot. And so this is bringing the mask down, which is going to bring in an overlay which is modified, and it's going to blend it here. It's just, if you're familiar with doing layer modifications and blending, it's basically doing that is what it does. And you can change the strength and the depth, which is the verticality here, and I'll let you play around with that. Okay, so this is basically, at this point we could save one version like this and another version like that, and a lot of times I will do that. I'll save intermediate steps there just to, because that allows me to go back to that step of the processing. It saves the overall configuration every time you write the file out. It saves out in one of those ppt out.ppt files that we talked about earlier. Okay, don't go above the working folder. All right, so RT defaults. When it opens the file, it will save the state of raw therapy at that point where the file is located in the settings. And when you write the file out, it will write out the settings for that particular output file. Okay, so at this point we could go back in raw therapy and we could load those in as defaults, but I'm going to get to through this and we'll contrast the earlier settings I used for another file with what I generate here by hand. Okay, so I'm going to set this for luminance only. And one of the good things about raw therapy is it actually has INI files. Those files are basically text files. You can go in and read the settings. And one of the things that is in the file is, we'll say luminance, yes or no. And that's what it means, is that this is on or off. You don't have to reopen the file to check it. You can look at the out.pp3 file and see that. As opposed to a proprietary software package which stores all this stuff in some proprietary encryption format in some header or some file somewhere. Okay, open source does have its advantages, but anyway, so we'll leave the luminance on, so this keeps it relatively tame at this point, and then go on. We'll close this one up and go to the exposure, and this is where the fun stuff happens, because you can see the exposure here is relatively low. Okay, and all the other settings that you normally play around in your camera or in GIMP or some basic tool, all these are off. Again, the only one we might use is this one, and I will show you why we're not going to use it in a minute on this case, because you don't need to. This one is not really a very high dynamic range shot. We can see we've got plenty of dynamic range to work with here. And I tend to like to use a Cellphone blending. It gives me a little better color than the basic blend. But you can just raise that exposure here. And when I get it up in the upper quarter, I get the blue for the sky in the upper quarter, that's generally going to be reasonably realistic. Okay, and as you can see now here, we still have some haze, even now, because we've brought it back in by doing that. But the foreground is giving me a decent amount of clarity. These parts are way back in the scene, and there's not much in the middle here, which is what this part would be. This overall is not a really great scene to shoot in the first place, which is why I'm not going to worry about it too much. I would normally save this, and I'm going to save it here. Okay. So coming back, we've saved it. Let's see what happened. And we have modified here. Okay, so I saved it twice by mistake. But I put an RT extension on, and there it is. Hopefully I didn't overwrite the nef file, which I don't think I did. But if I did, it should be nef.png. So let's see what happened there. Okay, so there's your nef.rt that I just saved. And we can open it in there. And that's pretty accurate. I mean, it just was, normal color, normal scene, and you see a lot of this purple stuff off in the distance, and that's pretty accurate. And we can open it in GIMP, and okay. And we'll see. So yeah, so we've got a little bit of red going on here in the very end. And there's still some shadows that are dark. There, that's one way to do it. Okay. Do that way. All right, but I don't really want to change that. So I'm going to go to the histogram, make sure I didn't change. I'm going to make this, undo basically allows you to go back to the base image. I don't want to modify the file. That just set a marker by which these points here are updated. And so that's fine, okay? Can look at the sky. It's not badly, blown out or anything like that. There's no damage going on here, okay? Which if we were to do this, knock it up by maybe 2 stops, oh, sorry, it's only going to do these 2 blocks, which we don't want to do. Go there, and we exposure by that much, say. Oops, sorry, that's a black hole. Reset exposure, like that. See, this is what you don't want to have happen, right here. You don't want everything so hot that the sky starts to get blown out and everything in the background goes. You don't want it so hot that you get overexposure in the areas that are delicate. Where's my histogram? Okay. Like that, okay? And this is what the 6A will do. The 6A will push the exposure so much that it's borderline blown out in the parts that are already in the highlights. And you need to not do that to correct it in the process of correcting it. So in that regard, it's fairly straightforward to get a better result than you can get with your 6A or cell phone, because it is generally going to overexpose it just a tad. And when you're doing it yourself, that you can keep from doing that, okay? But we still have a little bit of haze here to work with, but in the real scene, there was that kind of haze there. And if you want to get rid of that, you can go back into, why do I have 2 boxes open? I think I have, no, okay, I just can't see. All right, so if you want to get rid of that haze, you can go back into your haze thing, take this off, and try to manage that a little bit better. It's hard to manage, which is why you really can only get so much of this fixed without going in and doing something crazy like making a shot a lot colder. And then it's going to blue out a lot of that. And that is how the haze filter works in the 6A. It says, oh, there's haze in the sky. I will blast the sky with a blue filter and get rid of that haze. And you do not necessarily want to do that, okay? So yeah, you can fix this to a certain degree, and I'm telling you, because it's the very background of the shot, it's hard because there's so much haze between the camera and the back of the shot that it's the farther back away it is, the harder it is to really fix it in post. So let's go back here. I can undo the last stop but not all the stops in raw therapy. So we need to basically get it back to where it was, and I'm not sure how exactly to do it, but for right now we'll leave it like that. Okay. Now if you try to strengthen it, that will have some effect also, but we don't, again, see, that's shifted it into the blue section trying to fix it when we don't want to do that at all. And let's see if we can get that. Yeah, okay. So you can go back a little bit. All right. Anyway, so that's fine. Let's see what the white balance does if we do it one more time. There we go. Okay. So and then we undo that to get it back where it was. So this is kind of warm here, but that's fine. Okay. So now we'll close the haze removal section, and you've learned that what it basically does is push the part of the shot blue or cold to clear up that haze. But we're still not quite done yet. So one of the things we can do is we have a decent histogram here, okay? And one of the things you can do is knock down the lightness a little bit. So that will make it much more natural. It's a little bit dark, which is, like I said, changing the gamma a little bit to get rid of some of that haze. And then we will save that just as an example. That looks like what I like to do is every time I remove it from the last stop, I'll save it so I can go back and get back to that point again. We're back. Okay. All right, now we're live again, and so now we see we have some room to play with in the histogram, and we can knock that up a little bit more. Okay, and again, we don't want to push the highlights into the edge of the histogram. We just want it to get, we're already knocking on that door right there. You can see the guy's shirt is starting to blow out a little bit, but the clouds are not much of a problem. Okay, so we haven't touched the contrast, so no ridiculous amount of shadow blacking going on. I haven't touched the black point, so none of that happening either, where everything's suddenly go and it goes down into black. Just some minor changes, and we've already made this shot significantly better than it was originally. However, again, it's not that bad to start with. But you need to practice this kind of thing to understand, first, to get a good exposure when you're taking the shot. Get your your sky up in the upper 75 or 80% here. You can deal with underexposures to a certain point, but the lower the exposure, the less detail you're going to have in the shadows to work with. You can deal with overexposures to a certain point, but the more you overexpose, the less detail you're going to have in the highlights, and that includes the bright parts of the rock, the bright parts of the shot, and the clouds. It's very easy to just ruin the clouds by overexposing, and that again is one problem with the 6A, is it tends to ruin the clouds. And when the clouds are a significant part of the shot, you don't want to ruin the clouds. And since it's already cropped at the 6.9, you're going to have to crop out the clouds to clean that up. Okay, so obviously with a DSLR, you can easily control this exposure and get either bracketing or changing the EV in the camera, or changing the shutter speed. Or, you can deal with that. Bracketing changes, at least on my camera, it changes the F number, which is not an ideal way to do that, which is another reason why it doesn't stack well in the camera, because it changes the lens sharpness across the frame as you go away from the center. You really want to change the shutter speed, not the F number. Although, of course, there are times when you rather change the F number than the shutter speed. I personally would rather change the shutter speed because I always shoot it a little bit fast. But essentially, stacking images in the camera does not give you the best resolution of the shot. This, you will find, is going to have plenty of resolution, plenty of fine detail. And in the 6A, all of this would be noise reduced and smeared and low resolution. You would not have anywhere near that resolution. And you'll see that when I pull up some of the 6A shots in some of the samples I've ever taken. All of this stuff is going to be smeared and blurred, and you're not going to see that in the 6A shots. So this is, I would say, already better than the shots that I've taken of the scene with the 6A at the same time. It's probably better. And I'll pull up some images samples later on. Okay, so now having saved that, my next thing that I'm going to do is hit the auto levels and see what it does. And this is good. Even the auto levels did not blow out the shot. A lot of times, especially if it's down here, the peak is down here, you hit auto levels and it will just go poof, and everything will be like way higher than it is. So I'm going to save this, and I should be able to save this now without running away. We'll save it. Click that. You get another copy. Okay? And you can see how it's getting nice and clean and clear in the background. That haze is definitely vaporizing. And this is what happens when you kind of take baby steps. You know, you need to take large steps to figure out what happens. Like if I do this, when you're tweaking the tools, okay, yeah, but not when you're fine-tuning things. You want to take baby steps and get things better. And you'd be surprised at how the problems suddenly go away once you get close to where the optimal settings are. So I think this is probably the best that we could get for the effort. And again, I've spent at least 2 hours already on this so far. This is going to be a big video. So let me stop here and pull up some samples. I don't know what happened there, but I'll stop here and pull up some samples to compare this to. All right, so it's recording again. Okay, let's look at some samples. So first, I'm going to pull up the last one we did here, and we'll see if we've got better shots. Going backwards. All right, there's the original image, or the next original image. And let's see what we generated here in raw therapy. Best way to do that is we can at least see what we have. So that's not much different. Now, these are D300F shots, are 12 megapixels or 8 megapixels proportionally to 16:9. This is the first one we saved. Okay, so this is how much better it's gotten as we've gone along. It's the same shot. So I think this is the same shot. Let's check the file data. 52, 52, 1. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to say for, okay, we'll leave it there. And what I normally do is this. I'll open an instance here, put it over here in, all right, and get this to be roughly half the screen. And then we'll go back, open a new one. So now I have some 6A samples, and we'll open them, and I'll show you them full screen. Okay, so this is a little bit overexposed, but basically I'm trying to think of, oh, I need to figure out what we need here, what we want. Okay, so we want this particular thing right here to just pass this slash, and we may have to edit this to get it, so don't worry about that. We'll get back. Main thing is this is in the center of the screen, and we're going to have to edit this a little bit to get it cropped down properly. So we'll open it in GIMP. Let's see if I fucked up again. No. Okay, so now we're going to cut this down a tad to 16:9, and we're going to go. The other problem is we need to make sure we don't take too much of the bottom. And of course, this is going to be a different focal length altogether, so it's never going to be perfect. Just off that corner there to just off this guy, bring it down. And we don't really want too much. I really don't like having enough there. Let's see where we are here on this one. All right, like halfway, just under the lip here. Okay, so it's not quite the same angle, but it's close enough for government work. Okay, so there's your blue peak. The red is right on the edge. Now this is a better exposure because we've cropped it down to the part that we really want to save. Okay, so pause. Recent. Oh, I didn't. Oh shit, I didn't save it. Did I? Oh, I didn't save it. Ha! Well, that explains that. Let's see here. Oh, I didn't save the file. Okay, so. Okay, we'll get it back there. But that was stupid. I didn't save the file. God, what a moron. Let's just go here and see if I can find it. Okay. It's there. Just being stupid. Okay. Hang on, cut all this out. It's right there. I just don't see it for some reason. I don't know why. There it is. Okay. Open. Okay. Sorry, a bit of a brain fart there. That's what happens when you get old, man. You start losing your mind left and right. So let's just go back to 300 and go back to where we were. Okay, and okay, so what's wrong here? There. This point, that point, and then, okay, so one of the things you have to do is make sure they're the same size. This is still slightly off. Okay, so there we go, more or less. Okay, that point is, see these three here, then this is the next one. This thing is way smaller. Let's see here, way 50. Okay, so So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and okay. So this is, it's not the same perspective, not the same shooting location, but this is more or less the same scale. So as you can see here, we have this here. This is a more natural green. It's a little, this is one of the things you definitely find out is that the DSLR tends to shoot a more greenish green. For instead, you see the highlights here, very strong highlights that are not there in this. There's this rock part here, which is obscured, so that's not quite the same. I'm not sure where I shot this, but I think I shot at the same point. It's just a slightly different point here. Let's look behind here a little bit here. And we should see some serious differences here in a minute. Okay, so there is that right there, and that's at the top. No, where's this little angel thing here going right there? I mean, it's just so different. There's off the tree. Let's see if we can find that. Wow, there's something seriously wrong here in terms of scaling. Okay. All right, so I ran into a little bit of a trouble here with this sample image example because the scene could not be cropped properly next to the boy and the man on the right side. If you look at the hills just above them, you see on the one shot, I think it's the 60 shot on the left, there's an extra hump in there, and I cropped to that second hump, not the first one. So the shot can't be cropped to that first hump on the 6A shot because of the angle at which the shot was taken. It's keeping the shot long in that regard, so that the 6A shot requires 400% to match the 300S shot at 300% and so on. Even though they're both 16:9, there's more going on there than I want to deal with right now. It's just, I just want to move on past that. So I wanted to touch briefly on the dynamic range optimization, and I did a few, maybe a minute or so video of that, and basically you can see that when you activate the DRO, it compresses the dynamic range of the histogram from the ends towards the middle. And so there's a question of where that center target is. Does it move up and down the scale, the intensity scale, so that, say, if you put it on the top quarter away from the right hand side, does it compress everything up? Or if you put it on the bottom, does it compress everything down? Things like that. And that's something you can experiment with. I would say that essentially the main thing is be careful not to do too much DRO when the image is not necessarily showing a large dynamic range, and you find and basically find that it's a large dynamic range when you get two peaks, one peak at the near the highlight, another peak near the shadows. That is a good candidate for a DRO. When you get like just one peak in the center and maybe a peak in the highlights, that's not so much. It just means that the highlights are well represented, the shadows are not, and the highlights are. And the main thing is you don't want to have the highlights too high. The mid-range, the mid-tone's too high near the highlights. Okay, also because this was a effort to make this video, and also I wanted to put in some cherries for people who actually made it through the hour and a half that it took to get this far. It's something to have you go with a good feeling, at least some sort of good feeling. I put some samples of the 6A targets, for you DSLRs shooters to work towards, and also just to save you the trouble of driving around the North Rim to take these same shots. I mean, it's a long way to come down here, and a lot of time and effort And it's a, it's a decent place to come and hang out, but it's a lot of driving to get down here. So I hope you enjoy the photos. And these are the ones that I took basically on 80.A coming from Page over to Fredonia, and also the other ones at the end are the ones going out Cape Royal Road from the main 67 road down near the Southern Viewing Station.